Chapter 11 of Hebrews, I call it the Hall of Faith. Not the Hall of Fame, but the Hall of Faith. Here, the author of Hebrews gives a great list of men and women who were faithful to God. It's the Hall of Faith. Faith is God's work in us to which we respond. These are men and women who responded to that which was at work in them. God was in them working, and they responded with great faith. And before this passage, the author speaks about Abraham and Moses and all the great things that God did through Moses, parting the Red Sea, all the signs and wonders they saw. And then he goes on, he begins in our passage that we picked up with today. And what else should I tell you? And he gives this great and amazing list of other men and women who are faithful. He says, Gideon, he mentions Gideon. Gideon, who had a small army that went against a larger army, but God was faithful and gave them strength to defeat the larger army. Barak was one who listened and trusted the prophecy of Deborah that his army would be victorious. So he trusted. Gideon had faith. Samson had strength. Our God is faithful, he's strong, and he's trustworthy. That's something we need to write on our mirror every morning and just look at it and remind ourselves, God is faithful. He is strong and he is trustworthy. We need to hear that every day. And I oftentimes will go back to this passage, chapter 11 of Hebrews, just to be encouraged. I think we need to be encouraged today that these men, through faith, conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, and obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of the weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. They saw the resurrection. And guess what? They saw all these great things. And was their faith tested as well? You better believe it. The author goes on and shows how it was tested, because listen to this, a faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. A faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. Our faith has to go through tests. That's what makes it strong. And these men and women, they went through that. They were tortured, it says, suffered mocking, flogging, chains, imprisonment, stoned. They were sawn in two. They were killed. They went through some trials. But through every trial, they trusted that God is faithful. He's strong. And he's trustworthy. And it says this in verse 39, it says, "In all these things, though commended through their faith, these men and women did not receive the promise." What's the promise? The promise is the Holy Spirit. Remember, Jesus says that. He says, remain in Jerusalem and wait for the promise, the Holy Spirit, right? These men and women were strong. They were faithful. They were trustworthy. They did all these great things without the Holy Spirit dwelling in them. What does that say to us? That says this: if they did that back then, how much more can God do in us? How much more strength, faithfulness, and trustworthy can he pour into us? We have the Holy Spirit within us. We should expect greater signs than what happened in the old covenant. Superior blessings cannot be provided from an inferior covenant. If in the inferior covenant, the old covenant, they received this many blessings and these great signs, imagine in the new covenant, which we're in right now, and the Holy Spirit dwelling within us, we should expect great signs, miracles, and wonders. And I pray that today that you write your own wall of faith. This is the hall of faith, but I want you to have a wall of faith. I want you to, just like the guy in Hebrews here, he wrote down all the victories, all the times God was faithful, trustworthy, and strong. We need to do that. We need to reflect on our lives and say, Lord, where were you faithful? Where were you strong? Where were you trustworthy? Write it down, and then when you're feeling down, and you're feeling like you can't go on, and you can't take this COVID stuff anymore, you can't take isolation, you need to read through that as a reminder of who God is. Yes, God, you got me through COVID twice. Yes, God, you got me through my addictions. Yes, God, you got me through my alcoholism. Yes, God, you got me through my depression. Yes, God, you got me through my financial issues, because you, God, are faithful, strong, and trustworthy.